Did the stuff get here? Starting today, you're gonna live with my mom, so be nice. Matt said lightly on the phone, while away on business. Yeah, everything's here. Living with my mother-in-law, a decision Matt made on his own. Mom is coming by today too, so give her a hand with settling in. Mom, when's he gonna cut the apron strings? My husband Matt, consistently belittling and looking down on me. I had reached my breaking point. No longer would I tolerate my husband's whims, nor live with a mother-in-law who relishes in making my life miserable. How coincidental, I just left this house too. Done with a self-centered, financially irresponsible mama's boy. I decided to cut ties with my husband and choose a path of freedom. Later, my husband and his mother met an end beyond anyone's imagination. My name is Sarah. After graduating from college, I joined a securities firm and was put in charge of sales. Being out on the field, there are many days when I can't even take a proper lunch break. However, my hard work paid off, and I became one of the top performers in sales at the company. The reason I could work so hard was clear. To repay my mother. My father passed away when I was young. After that, my mother raised me all by herself. Being raised by a single parent, my mom didn't want me to feel disadvantaged. With that determination, she worked day and night, enabling me to graduate from college. She never used her busy schedule as an excuse and attended every school event I had. The lunches she made daily were filled with her love. Mom never complained or showed weakness, always greeting me with a bright smile. When I landed my job, it took some weight off her shoulders, and she cut back on work. Finally, she started having some time for herself. Now, it's my turn to work hard and give my mom, who has always strived for me, a chance to enjoy a relaxed and happy life. One afternoon, I found myself killing time in a coffee shop. I had about 30 minutes until my meeting with a client. I thought I'd enjoy some good coffee and take it easy for a bit. Despite being midday, the downtown coffee shop was bustling with office workers. People like me just passing the time, some working on laptops, others having business talks. Everyone was spending their time in their own way. It's rare for me to sit back and observe people like this. I decided to enjoy this limited time alone. Then, I caught the eye of a man sitting a little away from me. Feeling embarrassed about looking around so much, I averted my gaze. I shifted my focus to my smartphone. There was still a little time left before my appointment. Suddenly, could it be, "Are you Sarah?" The man I had made eye contact with earlier approached me. He was dressed in a courier company's uniform. What? Startled by this sudden approach, I accidentally dropped my smartphone. Still as clumsy as ever, huh? He laughed loudly and picked up my phone for me. I was frozen in place. Who was this man? It's me, Matt. We were in the same seminar in college. That's right, I remember now. He always sat behind me in our college seminar. And just like now, he had a bright smile and would talk to me. Matt, it's been so long, I didn't have your contact and we lost touch after graduation, so meeting you here is like a dream. I was truly happy to reunite with him. During our college days, I always loved hearing his laughter from behind me. He was popular and well-liked by other students. Though, it's time for my appointment. Sorry, I have to go. The clock hands were nearing the time of my meeting with the client. I couldn't afford to be late. In a hurry, I made my way out of the cafe. Wait, can I get your number? I quickly pulled out my phone. After that, we started keeping in touch. He was a delivery guy for a courier company, handling deliveries around my workplace. As a result, we saw each other more often during work, and our relationship quickly grew closer, eventually leading to dating. It was a fateful reunion. And 3 years into our relationship, he proposed to me. I felt like a dream. I was going to have a fun, laughter-filled married life with him, talking about all sorts of trivial things. My marriage was supposed to be filled with happiness. But then, something happened that changed everything. Sarah, you're from a single-parent home. It was during our visit to his parents' house to announce our marriage. When the conversation turned to my parents and his mother learned that my father had passed away long ago, she frowned deeply. Did your mother really raise you with love? In the living room, sitting across the table from me, my mother-in-law's face clouded over. I was a bit taken aback by her unexpected reaction. Of course, to raise me, my mom worked mornings and nights, but she always took time off for my birthday and Christmas. Plus, she never failed to make me lunch every day and attended all my school events. I wondered if my mother-in-law had some prejudice just because I was raised by a single parent. Taking time off for birthdays and Christmas, making lunches, attending school events, those are just basic duties of a mother. That's not really answering my question. Isn't doing all those basic motherly duties a form of love? I didn't know how to respond. Plus, you're still contributing your earnings to your mother's household, right? If you're struggling so much, she could work more. I felt disheartened as it seemed like my mother was being disparaged. Children from single-parent homes lack parental love, leading to twisted personalities and a greedy attitude towards money. It's concerning. Even if she harbored such prejudices, should she express them in front of me? Her words felt frightening. What are you talking about? Being from a single-parent home doesn't mean there are problems. Sarah has grown up to be so admirable. The securities firm she works for is even featured in TV commercials. It's a well-known company. Matt, you better step up your game, or Sarah might out-earn you, right? My father-in-law joked, sitting next to my mother-in-law. Indeed, my income was higher. But that was something I never worried about. Raising a daughter all by herself, and now seeing her get married, Sarah's mom must be so happy. Saying this, my father-in-law gave a warm smile. Sarah, from now on, think of me as your real dad, and if there's anything, just let me know. I'll help in any way I can. How much comfort my father-in-law's words brought me. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. I bowed my head. My heart felt warm, and tears welled up in my eyes. But when I looked up, my mother-in-law's face was stern, seemingly still uneasy about our marriage. I look forward to a good relationship with you. I bowed again at the entrance and left his house. Same here, take care on your way home. Contrasting with my kind father-in-law's words, my mother-in-law said nothing and just glared at me. It was a gaze more frightening than any words. Leaving his house with lingering unease. Our wedding took place months later. It was a small ceremony at a quaint venue in the suburbs, attended only by close family. The ceremony went smoothly, and we vowed eternity in front of our relatives. Then, a dinner party was held. Centered around the bride and groom, the relatives formed a circle and enjoyed their meal. Actually, this was the first time my mother and mother-in-law met. Usually, there are several occasions for both families to meet before the wedding, like the engagement party or family introductions. However, my mother-in-law had fallen ill on every occasion and never attended. Whether she was genuinely ill remains uncertain. It might have been a feigned illness. Therefore, this was also my first time meeting my mother-in-law since the marriage proposal. Mrs. Johnson, Matt's mother, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Sarah's mother. I'm so happy for this wonderful connection between our families. My mother spoke to my mother-in-law. Looking a bit nervous. Looking forward to a good relationship, she said and bowed her head slightly. Then, my mother-in-law responded in a low, sighing voice, I had hoped for a daughter-in-law from a more well-established family. I couldn't tell if my mother heard her words, but she continued to smile calmly. She never made eye contact with my relatives. "Mom, thank you for coming today. You must be tired." On our way back from the dinner, we walked through the lively city streets. The night was alive with bright neon lights and the bustling voices of people, showing no signs of sleep. Not at all. It was a beautiful ceremony. The food was delicious. "Thank you for having me," my mother replied with her usual smile. "Maturo, Sarah, you'll finally leave home and start your life with Matt." "That's right. Maturo, I will finally leave my family home and start new life with my husband." There might be times when you disagree and argue. When that happens, make sure to face each other and talk it through. With a loving heart, you can overcome anything, and always hold hands, staying a couple. That's the key to happiness. After losing my father, my mother must have faced many hardships. Her words deeply resonated in my heart. "Sarah, be happy," my mother said, smiling at me. Her eyes sparkled under the neon lights. "Yeah, thanks, Mom." I fought back the tears welling up in my eyes. Then we left the bustling streets behind and headed back to our quiet home. The next day, my new life with my husband began. The apartment was rented in my name, but we decided to split the rent in half. My work was going well, and I even gained more clients. As a result, I became busier than before, with more overtime and often returning home late. My husband always welcomed me home with a smile, tired as I was, and prepared dinner. Dinner with my cheerful and bright husband was a fun time that blew away my fatigue. He was supportive, understanding both the division of household chores and the demands of my job. His massages before bed were the perfect relief for my tense body. I am grateful for such a kind husband. He valued his in-laws very much. Especially, his feelings towards my mother were special. Therefore, every weekend, he made sure to take me to visit his parents' house. However, for me, it was never a pleasant time. "What, you make Matt cook dinner every night?" Again, his mother-in-law frowned. The start of a painful time. That's why I dislike single-parent families. The education is just not thorough. You think it's natural to work and neglect household duties. Poor Matt, he's tired too. However, I always prepare breakfast and lunch boxes. Because you were raised in poverty, your obsession with money is intense. That's why you prioritize work over home. That's why I dislike single-parent families. Indeed, money is important. But the reason I work is not just for money. It's to grow as a professional in society. Moreover, the fact that we have a car my husband loves, that he can go to golf tournaments with his work colleagues, and that occasionally we can eat high-quality meat for sukiyaki at his parents' house, is all because I work. Doing your favorite job until late at night and leaving housework to Matt, that's really selfish. It's a typical trait of someone raised in a single-parent home, unable to consider others. One sarcastic remark after another kept coming. Anyway, it seemed that my mother-in-law disliked my being raised by a single parent. My husband never opposed what his mother said. He just listened with a smile. I always looked down. It was my father-in-law who helped me in such times. "What are you saying? After all, you have never worked, right? Working means facing heavy responsibilities. While it's fulfilling, the stress is also immense." I always looked up when my father-in-law spoke. Moreover, thanks to Sarah, Matt is living happily. Days no problem at all. Sarah, thank you always. With my father-in-law's support, I could endure my mother-in-law's spiteful words. My father-in-law was like my real father. I loved my father-in-law very much. But suddenly, a nightmare-like event occurred. The next day, I was at my office desk doing paperwork. I was working on a report that had to be submitted by the end of the day. That's when my smartphone rang. It was from my husband. I answered the phone in a quiet voice. "Sarah, my dad, my dad." My husband seemed distraught. He couldn't get his words out properly. I left the office and went into the break room. "Matt, what's wrong? Calm down. What happened?" My husband told me with trembling words. "Dad's been in a traffic accident. He's in critical condition, unconscious." There was a moment of silence. My mind went blank. "Just come to the hospital. I'm heading there right now too." After telling me the name of the hospital, my husband hung up quickly. I too rushed out of the office and jumped into a taxi. "My father-in-law can't be unconscious. It must be a mistake. He has to be okay. He's got to be fine." In the taxi, I kept reassuring myself, struggling to calm my emotions. Then I arrived at the hospital my husband had mentioned. It was a huge general hospital. I was led to the emergency treatment room. There was a police officer standing at the entrance of the room. I nodded slightly to the officer and entered the room. There were my mother-in-law and husband. My mother-in-law was sitting weakly in a chair. Her eyes and nose were bright red, and my husband had his shoulders slumped. I peered at the bed where my father-in-law lay sleeping. He was covered in bandages, with a large wound on his face. With many tubes attached all over his body, my father-in-law was asleep. It seems he went outside to post mail during work. Then, as he crossed the pedestrian crossing on a green light at the intersection, a car suddenly turned and hit him. After hitting my father-in-law, the car continued to swerve. Then, the car mounted the sidewalk, hit a street tree, and stopped. High levels of alcohol were detected in the driver's blood. "Father-in-law, please wake up." I gently held my father-in-law's hand. It was a warm and large hand. My mother-in-law and husband were called by the police to talk. I held my father-in-law's hand the whole time. I could feel the heartbeat. "It's okay. My father-in-law is alive. We just have to wait for him to wake up. Father-in-law, when you wake up, let's go home together quickly. It's okay even if there are any after effects. I will help you. You've always helped me, right? Now it's my turn." I didn't cry. Because my father-in-law is going to make it. He would recover and show me his kind smile again. However, my father-in-law did not wake up. A few days later, in the middle of the night, we received a call from the hospital and immediately rushed to my father-in-law's side. In the hospital room, doctors and nurses were bustling about. His condition had suddenly changed. His heartbeat, which had been stable, suddenly became erratic. "Father-in-law, hang in there, father-in-law." My mother-in-law and husband were also desperately talking to my father-in-law. It happened just a few minutes later. After hearing our voices, my father-in-law quietly passed away. It was as if he had been waiting for us. It was such an abrupt end. How could this happen? The day before the accident, my father-in-law was chatting with me, his smile unchanged. He always scolded my mother-in-law when she made snide remarks towards me. He was the same energetic father-in-law, unchanged. I held my father-in-law's hand all night. It still had warmth. I wanted to believe that he was still alive. But by the next morning, the warmth of that hand had faded. "Father-in-law, thank you for everything." My father-in-law, who always helped me and embraced me with a kind smile like a real daughter. Did my words reach him? A year has passed since then. We completed the interment of my father-in-law's ashes, and we finally started to accept life without him. But our lives changed drastically. Deeply grieved by the loss of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law started to stay home more. Concerned, my husband began to visit his parents' house more frequently. Her beloved husband had suddenly passed away. It was natural for her to be in pain. That's why I agreed with my husband staying close to his mother. My mother-in-law, who lost her appetite and became thinner, always seemed low in spirits. Worried, I also occasionally visited her to check on her. "I'm going through such a hard time, and you hardly show your face. Don't you worry about me. That's why I dislike people raised by a single parent. You just don't understand others' feelings." Yet her snide remarks towards me remained. Was she venting her grief over losing her husband through her snide remarks towards me? To make matters worse, her mindset even changed my husband. Hearing about my mother-in-law's remarks every day, my husband became tainted with prejudice against being raised by a single parent and started looking down on me. "You're from a single-parent background." That became my husband's refrain. Brainwashed by his mother, he gradually stopped returning our home. We ended up living completely separate lives. Several weeks passed. My contact with my husband was limited to phone calls, and we no longer saw each other's faces. Even on the phone, he continued to make demeaning remarks towards me. Furthermore, he stopped contributing his monthly salary to our household expenses, leaving me to pay all the rent. He must be using his salary to support his life with his mother. That's what I told myself. One day, my husband's transfer was decided. My husband's trucking company expanded, opening new branches in rural areas. He was assigned to manage one of these new branches. This branch was about a 3-hour drive from the city where we live, so he chose to work there alone. My mother-in-law considered joining him, but hesitated to leave the city filled with memories of my father-in-law, deciding to stay. Thus, they ended up living apart. A few weeks after my husband's transfer, an envelope arrived at our home. It was addressed to him. Even after his transfer, my husband hadn't updated his address or filed a change of residence, so all the mail still came to our home. It was an envelope I didn't recognize, so I checked the sender. What? No way. I was shocked by the name I saw. It's over, I thought. There's no point in us being a married couple anymore. Our marriage has already fallen apart. Holding the envelope in my hand, I made up my mind. I'll file for divorce. That's when it happened. The doorbell rang, and it was a delivery service. Opening the front door, I was greeted by an astonishing sight. Several large cardboard boxes were there. They were all addressed to my husband. The sender was my mother-in-law. I signed for the delivery, feeling overwhelmed. So many packages, where will I put them all? I cleared some space in the room and managed to stack the cardboard boxes in a corner. Since they were addressed to my husband, I couldn't open them. I wondered what was inside. Just then, my husband called. "Did you get the package?" His tone was gentler than usual. "They did, but what are we going to do with all these packages? Ever since I moved for work, Mom has been calling every day. She's lonely, and it's not just at night. Recently she's been calling during the day too. It's starting to wear me out. He should be more considerate of his mother who loves him. A phone call isn't much to ask." That's when I had a great idea. If we live together, she won't be lonely, right? It seems like my husband has misunderstood the meaning of living together. If he really wants to live with his mother so much, he should take her to his new location. So, the rest of the stuff will arrive in a week. Please accept it for me. Mom will move in on the same day. Thanks in advance. What does he mean by thanks? He's on a solo assignment. How does he plan to take care of his mother? Thanks. Are you coming back too? Surely, he must have thought about the future. No, my work here is likely to extend. I can't return for a while. So for now, I want you to live with my mom. With that, my husband hung up the phone. This is no joke. He's been looking down on me. Stopped contributing to the household financially, and now he decides on his own that I have to live with his mother. Anger bubbled up inside me, and I couldn't stop shaking. I decided it's time to end this way of living. Then, a week later, my husband called again. Did you get the package? My mom will be heading there this evening, so please help her out. She must be tired, so assist her with unpacking. I was fed up with his constant mom talk. You, being raised by a single parent, really lack consideration, so please, take good care of my mom. I took a deep breath to calm myself and then spoke. The packages arrived this morning, and coincidentally, I just moved out of that apartment. What a coincidence. There was a moment of silence. If you're so keen on living in that apartment, you can re-sign the lease and pay the rent. What are you talking about? I can't deal with him and his mother anymore without breaking down. I'm tired of being manipulated by my husband's selfishness. A week ago, I decided to leave that apartment. And I decided to put an end to our marriage. Don't you understand? I've already left that apartment and returned to my parents' home. The only thing left there is your mother's cardboard boxes. You and she can do as you please with the place. I've left the divorce papers at the entrance. Just sign them and submit them to the office. My mom was next to me, helping with my stuff. I was on speakerphone, so my husband's voice filled the room. Silently, my mom listened to his voice. What are you talking about? You're at your parents' house now. Mom will be at the apartment this evening. Get back there quickly. She'll be lonely. You're making her suffer. Don't you see that? My husband's voice turned into a shout. I'm sick of your mom talk, your mother obsession. If you love her so much, then you deal with it. I have a mother too. Just like you, I've decided to take care of my mother. I don't care what he says anymore. I'm following my own path. You married into our family. You bear our family name. Don't you understand the significance of that? Marrying means joining this family, treating my mother as your own. I could picture my husband, red-faced with rage, on the other end of the phone. My anger reached its peak at my husband's self-centered words. Then, my mother spoke calmly. Mr. Matt, what are you misunderstanding? Marriage changed my name, but not the fact that we're a family bound by blood. Our connection is deeper than just on the surface. It's something that won't change in a lifetime. She continued. Besides, you two are getting divorced, right? Then the family name will change again. And the roles of daughter-in-law and mother-in-law won't matter anymore. My mother said this with a hint of sarcasm. My husband seemed at a loss for words. Then my mother pressed the red button on the smartphone, ending the call. It's finally over. Now, all that's left is to wait for the divorce papers to be officially processed. I looked at my mother with a feeling of relief. Mom, thank you. She smiled back at me. It was that night. We had just finished dinner and were cleaning up the table when suddenly the doorbell rang. I had a very ominous feeling. Who is it? I asked through the intercom. Please, open the door, I'm begging you. The one banging on the door was my husband. Fearing that the noise would disturb the neighbors, I opened the door. Please, come back, I'm sorry for everything that happened, I was wrong. My husband approached me aggressively. A divorce is just a joke, right? I can't live without you. Changing his attitude now is pointless. My mind is made up. I'm serious, I've told you, I'm fed up with a mother-obsessed husband. I've already vacated the apartment, so please deal with those boxes within this month. They're still sealed, just send them back as they are. Suddenly, my husband broke down crying. Then he knelt down, placing both hands on the floor, bowing his head. Please, the apartment where Mom lived has been vacated, and now she has nowhere to go. Can you reconsider just one more time? Mrs. Sarah, please, let's live together. I apologize for being harsh before. We can't manage without you. A tearful plea from my mother-in-law too. Probably a strategy they concocted together to gain my sympathy. Such a pointless charade. Didn't I already say, if you want to live in that room, just sign the lease in your name? Why cling to me, or is there a reason you can't rent a place? My husband remained motionless, his head still bowed. No, it's nothing. Sweat dripped from my husband's forehead. Just as I thought. So, what's this? Is this why you're struggling with money? I showed him an image on my smartphone. It was the envelope that had led me to decide on divorce. I had taken a photo of the envelope beforehand and saved it on my phone. Can you still say there is nothing wrong after seeing this? The sender of the envelope was, shockingly, a consumer credit company. And beneath the recipient's name, in red letters, it said collection notice. I haven't checked the contents. But it's probably a significant debt, isn't it? You haven't contributed a dime to our household finances, yet where has your salary been going that things have come to this? I finally delivered the final blow to my husband. His reason for wanting to get back together was just one. He only wanted to rely on my income. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. That's because. A brief silence followed. Well, the truth is, I failed in an investment. I was told by an acquaintance about a great opportunity and trusted them, pouring my entire monthly salary into it. I even went into debt. I didn't want to lose to you, Sarah, working at a securities firm. I wanted to prove that I too knew about investments. I wanted to show you that I could earn just as much through investing. When have I ever belittled my husband? Then, in an almost inaudible voice, my mother-in-law said, "It was me who said something unnecessary. I suggested that you, being an elite salesperson at a securities company, might be looking down on us. But it turned out to be a complete scam. I lost all my assets and ended up accumulating more debt. Desperate to repay it, I borrowed even more, hoping for a windfall, but everything failed. Unbeknownst to me, my husband had fallen into the pit of gambling. And the amount of debt had ballooned with interest. Please, help me. I can't manage without you, Sarah. I'll try to pay off the debt myself, but can you at least help with living expenses?" His face turned ashen. "After all the freedom you took, looking down on me, and now you change your attitude because you're in financial trouble. I'm sorry, but your debt is none of my concern. I don't want to talk to you two anymore. Let's communicate through a lawyer from now on. Please leave." They refused to back down. "Please, I'm begging you." My husband was as still as a statue, refusing to move. "If you insist on staying here any longer, I'll call the police." They both dropped their shoulders and slowly walked away. I watched them through the gap in the curtains as they left. My husband kept stopping, looking back. Perhaps hoping I would chase after him. That was the last time I saw my husband and mother-in-law. Some time later, our divorce was finalized. I heard through the lawyer that my ex-husband was quite reluctant to agree to the divorce. Was I such a convenient woman for him? Forget about that worthless woman from a broken home and move on quickly to find someone else, my former mother-in-law persuaded him. And finally, he gave in. Then, my ex-husband quickly started looking for a new wife. However, burdened with debt, his shabby clothes, unkempt beard, and overall unclean appearance didn't attract any women. Even if Matt managed to get a date, the deal-breaker was always living with his mill. As a result, his hopes of remarrying remained unfulfilled. Matt and Amy somehow managed in an old, small apartment without a bath. Matt's debts continued to rise, making it impossible to pay them off with his monthly earnings. Eventually, the creditors took legal action. Calls to Matt's workplace became frequent, leading to his wages being garnished. Unable to endure the judgmental looks from others, Matt resigned from his job in an attempt to escape. Of course, running from his debts wasn't an option, so Matt continued to work relentlessly, sparing no time for rest. From early morning newspaper delivery to construction sites and nighttime traffic management, Matt juggled various jobs, but his debts never decreased. Since all of Matt's income went towards debt repayment, they barely scraped by with the cleaning job his former mill found. To be working at this age, to live in such poverty. The former mill lamented their harsh life, often taking out her frustration on Matt. "It's all your fault we're in this mess." But this situation wasn't solely Matt's fault. It was also the responsibility of his former mill, who brainwashed Matt with daily complaints about me. No matter how much Matt was blamed, it wouldn't improve their living situation. Eventually, they even fell behind on rent for their rundown apartment and were ordered to leave. After that, Matt and Amy vanished into the shadowy world of back alleys, never escaping their hellish life. Their whereabouts became unknown to everyone. Meanwhile, I was enjoying life at my parents' home with my mother. Our connection as mother and daughter went beyond just names, to something much deeper. I was very pleased with what my mother said to my ex-husband. "Mom, I got my bonus. My performance was recognized, and it's an unprecedented amount. Let's go on a trip this weekend and celebrate big time." Ever since I was little, and even as an adult, my mom has always been there to protect me. Now it's my turn to show her my gratitude. From now on, instead of obsessing over marriage, I'll focus on protecting my mom as an independent woman. How about this hot spring? This food looks delicious. We excitedly planned our trip, browsing through brochures. And there's another parent I mustn't forget, my protective stepfather. I'm sure he's deeply pained by the tragic end of his former wife and Matt. Every year on his anniversary, I visit his grave with his favorite drink in hand. The grave is overgrown with weeds, seemingly untended by anyone. Probably, his former wife is too overwhelmed with her own struggles to care for it. So, I take it upon myself to tidy up around his grave. This is the only way I can show my gratitude to my stepfather. "Thank you, stepdad," I whispered, hands clasped together, under the clear blue sky.